Hey, it's Austin James. If you're like me, trying to live your best life while living with diabetes, you can relate to worrying if you're doing a good job managing your diabetes. I use the Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor to get real-time glucose readings and see the impact of every meal and activity to make better decisions. The Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor can help me live life with diabetes on my own terms, and it gives me more time for the things I love, like being a dad and a musician. Now this is progress. Learn more at freestylelibre.us.
For prescription only. Safety info found at freestylelibre.us.
There's a very low percentage of this that is smiles and glory holes. Very low percentage that is smiles and glory holes.
Smiles and glory holes, that's what we chase. Under the bright lights, it's a high-stakes race. With a heart full of spirit and those wide open goals, we're hoping for victories, smiles and glory holes. Cowboys!
All right, the One Star Cowboys podcast is back. You don't get many days like this, right? Where you have a new press conference for a new head coach. Doesn't happen often, so it was a big day today. And let's start. I'm Kevin Turner. I'm back. I hope everyone enjoyed the last episode. I listened to it on a plane, and you guys made great points. I wrote them all down that I want to talk about later. I'm kidding. I didn't do that. But I did like that you guys were very fair to Brian, because I do think Cowboys fandom has been just saying things about him without really, because they're mad at Jerry, and it sucks. And you know what? Maybe that's just the business. John Machota, Saad Youssef, Kent Garrison. John, we'll start with you. You asked a lot of good questions today. But any big takeaway, overarching takeaway from your time today at the press conference?
I thought that Brian Schottenheimer handled himself really well. And that's not a surprise. I mean, he's always handled himself well in the press conferences he does with us, but that's a little bit different. Smaller room, maybe 5-10 people asking questions, whereas this was obviously out in the atrium, same area where they did Dak Prescott's contract extension press conference one time. And there's just room for a lot of people in there. So big room. And I thought he commanded it well. I thought the things he shared, I thought he did a good job with that. Just explaining why, what he liked. And you guys getting an echo at all?
No.
Good? Okay, just making sure. But no, I thought he did a really good job. I thought that, as expected, there was some emotion, as anybody who has gone a long time trying to get a job and couldn't get it, and then they finally break through. Obviously, him being an assistant for 25 years and finally getting a chance to be a head coach. His dad was obviously a very successful head coach, so it's natural to have emotion like that. Multiple times, like you could tell that he had tears in his eyes. Jerry did, Steven did. So I thought he did a great job at the press conference. And just because I keep up with the rest of the NFL, you can sit there and go, oh, big deal, whatever, it doesn't matter. No, there's a lot of people that don't win the press conference. I'll tell you that right now. Yeah, probably don't come out there right off the rip saying Duval. I mean,
biting ankles?
Look that up if you haven't seen that.
Or biting kneecaps.
Biting kneecaps, easy. We're going to let that go.
Seriously.
I mean, Sirianni talking about things being planted and not being able to see the roots, and that thing worked out fine for them. But no, I thought I thought Brian did a really good job. I don't think that there's any reason that you should be hating on Brian. I think that you should give him an opportunity to see what he can do. But with that being said, you absolutely can be critical of Jerry. And there's nothing he did today that would make you or should make you change your mind. I felt like he was really going out of his way to try and stick up for himself, as almost like he went into the press conference like, hey, we'll talk about the coach. We'll talk about the coach. Guys, I'm still a risk taker. Guys, hold on. Let me tell you how much of a risk taker I am. Let me tell you about this, where I was just kind of like, what are we doing here? Why do you care? Why does that bother you so much? So that stood out to me from Jerry. And I thought that one was, but you go into these press conferences all the time thinking, well, Jerry's going to do something that stands out, because he goes in with a plan that he's not just going to answer a couple questions, get in and get out. He usually goes in with a message he wants to get across. And his message today was certainly that, you guys, I still take risks. I still take risks. And so when I hear that, I'm just like, oh no, you'll get a chance to show us in March. We'll see.
Yeah, just to to piggyback off of that and kind of expand on both of John's points, number one, I was impressed with Brian Schottenheimer as well. I thought he did a really good job, and not just in fluff things as well. I thought that when he started talking about the X's and O's, the motions that he wants to start doing a little bit more and things like that, I think there was legit substance that if you're looking for a reason to be excited, it was there. Like, I mean, I'm not saying this completely turns your entire perception of the hiring around. But if you were somebody that, like didn't, didn't watch every Monday press conference with the coordinators and didn't know anything about Schottenheimer, and were looking for a reason to believe in something, like I think Schottenheimer gave that to you both from a schematic standpoint and also just from a person standpoint. And I thought, he rattled off the names of the players that were there in the back, all those different kinds of things. And so I think I think there was a lot of that. Obviously, the tribute to his dad and all that talk was there as well. And then to John's other point as well, in terms of the way Jerry and Steven were, I thought it was interesting how defensive they were on so many different points. Like John mentioned, obviously the one about the risk taking, and that was right off the top. That was near the start of the presser. But then there was also the part of, both of them being defensive about the timeline of the McCarthy parting of ways, that, it wasn't so weird that it took over a week for that to happen. And they kind of, went on that for a little bit. And then I also thought there was one other thing. Oh, yeah, of course, the thing that kind of is taken off on social media, the Stephen Jones kind of, the air quotes on people think that we're in a drought and kind of being defensive about that. It's just a lot of those things where I'm just like, yeah, you don't even have to address those things. Like, you can kind of just leave it be, and it might not even be a conversation after the press conference, but because you went and scratched that rash, now everyone's kind of talking about it again.
In terms of what Brian said, though, about the offense, it is one of those type of things where, of course, that's what you say, because those are the things that the offense wasn't doing that the fans want to see. So we'll see if it happens and to what success that it comes to. But I will say that it sounds like that Jerry was interested in having Brian call the plays, even if Mike came back. And so I think that Jerry was very intrigued by some of the stuff that Brian's brought up over the years in meetings and things like that. And so I think that kind of planted a seed with Jerry, that down the line, he could be someone you consider to maybe call plays and maybe more. And the way everything ended up unfolding, he's now going to get an opportunity to call plays and do more. So, hey, I think the guy's got to be prepared. 25 years as an assistant coach, all the different coaches he's worked with, coaches he's played for, and then obviously his father that he's been around, that he's the one that biggest reason he's in the coaching business. So there's going to be he's got a lot of experience, so he's going to get a great opportunity. But that's the thing. It's the same thing that when you go from Ben Johnson being the OC to the head coach in Chicago, it's going to be more than just, is your offense going to have success? You got to put a good defense out there. What are you going to do to help put Micah Parsons, who is probably your best player, in the best position to be successful? Because that will probably be the thing that determines the most on how far you go if you are able to make a deep playoff run. So there's still a lot more that needs to be answered and seen in that. But from the way he handled himself, I thought he did a really good job. And I think that even some people that, there's people that are not going to like it to begin with, and you're not going to win those people over after one press conference. They're going to have to see it in games and probably multiple games and maybe even for a season. But for anybody that was on the fence or already in his corner, I think he got a lot more people on his side and locked in on his side.
Yeah, and one real quick thing, KT, just on a nuts and bolts thing. I talked to Steven after even the walk-off, and the structure of the staff is going to be similar to what it was with McCarthy, meaning that it's not going to be something where, in Arizona, Cliff was the head coach and the OC, and there really wasn't anybody labeled as the OC. There will be an offensive coordinator. It's just going to be kind of what Schottenheimer was the last 2 years to McCarthy. So on that front, don't expect like some flashy big name or something like that. It'll probably be somebody that Schottenheimer is really comfortable with and can get the messaging across, help implement his vision and his offense to the staff. But Schottenheimer will be the offensive coordinator, head coach, and play caller. But he will also have a titled offensive coordinator who, will kind of just be there the way Schottenheimer was the last 2 years.
And while we're on that side, but so no Witten, does it seem? I mean, nothing official clearly, but
John would know better about that because I think Jerry was asked about that, but by what I've read from John and others, it sounds like probably not.
Yeah, Jerry, he kind of tried to play around with the first question he was asked about it of like, yeah, no, I've talked to Jason. I stay in contact with him and kind of was like, so that took a follow up for it to be about being on the coaching staff. And he was just really like, he didn't even beat around the bush. He was like, no. So I don't think that's in play right now. It doesn't sound like that's very likely. Just as a joke though, KT, do you think that somewhere in the last couple of days, Ben McAdoo's like, why didn't I just stick around there a little bit longer?
Right? I mean, dude, it's not even that crazy. That's what's
I
wild.
will say there's no chance that he would. I'm not saying that he wouldn't be a good head coach. I don't think he would, but I don't know that. But in terms of winning the press conference and being where Schottenheimer has been, and not just this head coaching press conference, but what we've seen from him in the last 2 years, there's just no way. I mean, they're two way different, but it's just funny because he had that analyst role before.
You identified a name.
Consultant role, sorry.
You identified a name that like might be the guy who would be lower than Schottenheimer in terms of Cowboy fan approval. Right? But it was going to be tough for any coach they hired to get a good approval rating, first day in office. Right now, just the way things have gone, and given how low Jerry's approval rating is right now, but McAdoo might be the name that's under Schottenheimer. There's a couple. Look, it was very easy if you are a cynical person to watch that and pick out a few things and have your fun. I don't want to do that too much because I do want to be fair, but I do think there is a realistic nature. And Jerry said he can be realistic. He doesn't talk about the clock, right? Let's be realistic. Realistically, a couple of things is Brian Schottenheimer is probably, even though this won't be public record, is probably not going to cost that much comparatively. And I thought it was really strange that Jerry made a comment about how if he knew how much NFL head coaches were going to be making these days, he would have stayed being a coach. And
to be fair, disclaimer.
Yeah,
I said that several times before, but continue.
Well, but still, the facts are, it's hard to say facts because I don't have the sheet. I don't have the contract in front of me. But we all know Brian Schottenheimer is going to be one of the top 10 lowest paid coaches in the league this year, probably. Right? And that's like, Jerry, that's the one thing that's very maddening about this is you guys do have the funds to do things outside of the salary cap to give yourself a leg up, if you will. And I just that's maddening, and Cowboys fans don't like that. And I think Jerry,
there's no excuse that they don't have the highest paid coaching staff. Like the Dallas Cowboys should have the highest paid head coach and the largest assistant coaching staff, the largest scouting staff. Everything about them should be so over the top, kind of like during that Nick Saban run. It really was like that in Alabama. Like not only the facilities, but like their coaching staff was the biggest, their support staff was the biggest, like whatever, cafeteria, all that stuff was all over the top, like whatever. And with me saying all of that, I'm not saying that guarantees you Nick Saban at Alabama or the results Nick got in Alabama, but at least you could point to like, hey, we do everything we possibly can, and they don't do that at all.
The Yankees of the 2000s and
the Dodgers now.
Like, take roster out of it. It's the stuff around it that they spend money on too. And that's where you could do that. And there's no excuse for that. So
I don't know if the Dodgers do around it though.
Yeah.
With them, I'm talking more about the roster and the salary cap restraints not being there. But yeah, I mean, like there's no excuse to not have Bill Belichick as your head coach, Nick Saban as your DC, and whatever, go on down the line and really have some crazy like that.
I mean, that's how it is in college sports. Like not only are those top paid coaches, like the top, whatever it's making $10-12 million a year, but usually their OC and DC also make like the top money for that position as well, and borderlining on smaller school head coaches money where you're just like, damn, well, he's not going to leave for that other like mid-major head coaching job. He's making more as Alabama's DC, or the Cowboys don't do any of that. And not only do they not do that, they don't come close to doing anything like that.
Another thing that jumped out at me because we've heard a lot of these stories from Jerry over the years. Like some of them are not new. The Broncos story stands out. Clearly, we've heard the credit card story, but he did mention multiple times. I think this goes back to y'all's point of them being a little defensive. I've read this and I've read that, and it feels like that's happening way more than it was. I don't know. I'll say pre-COVID, I guess, just to give a somewhat of a timeline. It feels like he's reading more, or at least getting the information put in front of him more than ever, or at least the takes put in front of him more than ever before. Am I wrong on that?
Oh, I'll just pull back the curtain right here. After that thing's over, I had that conversation with multiple reporters about that. At the facility, and then also once I got back to my home on the telephone, we talked about that. So yeah, no, that was very, very apparent that stuff's being put on his plate. Also, I just can't get past this one, so I got to just share this. The Bronco one keeps adding to it too. So he told it so many times that it's like, well, it originally was like one reporter was with him. Now this time it's like several. So I'm hoping by maybe the 34th, 35th time I hear the story, I'm actually on the plane. So we're working our way in there.
Yeah, get in there, man.
At one point, I'm going to be the one that said, Jerry, why do you got that Bronco? Even though I wasn't technically probably even born at that time. But here we are.
It's all very strange. Kent, I'm going to play, or I would like for you to play, I think it's going to be clip number 5 here. And it's a quick one. It's just like, how do you sell this to the fans? Because I like, this is the thing. We can talk about this all we want in the media, and we do. But the millions of fans across the globe, the only planet with sustainable water where we can have life, there's a bunch of Cowboys fans out there, and they've had it. They've had it. How do you sell this to fans, Jerry?
What I would say for the fans is that to some, and it might be couched as a less than glamorous hire, what I would say to you is I got here taking shots and not shoddy shots. I got here taking shots. Don't think for 1 minute I won't take a shot. This was risky. This is risky.
That's a wild thing to say to a guy sitting to say in front of a bunch of people with that guy sitting 3 feet away from you. But, what shot are you going to do?
Yeah. And by the way, on the fans thing real quick, because it kind of relates to that clip, because he's talking to the fans. It was all, and KT, to your point about how much is put in front of Jerry, this is connecting the dots. This is also how you know things are put in front of Jerry as opposed to him going out and reading stuff himself, because he talked about how very patient the fan base has been and how, like, that kind of stuff. If he was seeking things out on social media, wherever, comment sections, things like that, he wouldn't be saying that the fan base is very patient. But the things that he's defensive about is the things that have been written in the media. So those are clips that are put in front of him, because there's no way he would say the fan base is very, quote, very patient. They're not.
Well, they're not picketing out in front of the Star or his home, so maybe that's what he means. Like, that hasn't happened yet, so that's why he's like, hey, I still feel pretty safe. So, and I mean, I can deal with a little social media. So when he was saying taking shots, like, are we talking Fireball? Like,
probably something a little more strong. I would imagine it's type of just hard, straight whiskey. I
like what kind?
Tequila. Well, the popular shot, if you're just having whiskey, it'd probably like Jameson is something that people do.
Do you think that's more popular than Fireball?
No, not more popular, but for an older man, I would assume that.
It still kills those hot dogs at the high school games and salts the McGriddle and does late night Whataburger Taco Bell runs.
Yeah, no, you can't. You might be right there. Jameson, the Jameson doesn't have the sweetness in it that Fireball has. But also,
I think you mixed up the word greatness. But yeah, go on.
Well, the other thing is too, like, this thing starts. Brian gets his 3 to 5 minute opening statement, and then the first question goes to Jerry, and we know how it goes. He talks for about 10 minutes, and that's where you're just like, dude, you're still not getting it. You're making it about you again. And he even says it. I don't want to make this about me. And he does. And that's the whole thing that people are sick of, is that because no one's buying it anymore. Fans bought this for a long time. Not certain. I mean, everyone has their own jumping off point. And by jumping off point, I don't mean stopping to watch the team. I just mean like, I'm done. I don't care about this anymore. And I think this time more than ever, I think people are like, I don't care about the press conference. I don't even care. The new head coach, great. I don't care. You see the guy who was with the Chargers in the years where Drew Brees was not a Hall of Fame level quarterback? He's that guy? Oh, God. Is he the guy that Georgia Bulldogs fans hate? Like, people are learning more about him by the day, and it's not even anything Brian can do about it. He's a product of this, and he is screwed. And this is where I was like, I do wonder, if Jerry's a risk taker, tell me how risky you are. What if it's bad? What if it's really bad this year? Like, what if it's start off slow, 2-6, 2-8? Like, look, does he make it? Like, does Jerry realize the urgency of this? Because I don't think he does.
Yeah, and KT, to your point about the risk, I mean, I actually wrote about this the day after Schottenheimer was hired. I do think this is a big risk. I just don't think it's a risk in the way that Jerry thinks it's a risk. Jerry thinks it's some like big, bold risk. And I think it's a risk because, dude, like you're 29-year drought and you're running out of time. You know, it's actually funny because Stephen Jones was asked about Michael Irvin's rant. I don't know if you guys have seen the whole thing and things like that. And it was very passionate. But in that rant, and I watched the whole thing as well, it's about 20 minutes. He talks about like there's a generation of fans that aren't even going to know what Cowboy success. That's the risk you're kind of running. Like you're running a risk at this point of if Schottenheimer has his 4 years that he is under contract for, and if he does not have success, you are up to 33 years on a drought of a championship. And at this point, you're running a risk of, as Irvin said, you know, not just not being successful, but you might lose the moniker of America's team. And you haven't yet, just to be clear, Cooper Rush versus whoever the Giants quarterback was on Thanksgiving, I forget, still drew huge ratings. So I'm not saying they're out of it yet, but that's the risk you're running here. Is this is the time where you have to that you better get this right. And I'm not saying Schottenheimer is not the guy. I'm just saying that's the risk Jerry is running right now.
Michael was fired up. That was entertaining.
Yes, that was great.
He's like, we're losing a generation. He said we're losing a generation of Cowboys fans, like that time on TV when he said that we're losing recipes. And I'm not adding anything else to that. If you know, you know. I'm not.
So can I, just because we've started out and it hasn't been a glowing thing. Oh, yes. So you said
what do you want to glow? What do you want to do?
Well, I guess something.
Why do you want to make it glowing? You want me to lie to these people?
I got one thing that I'll say that I actually liked. Okay. And it came from Shotty himself. Jerry gave me nothing that I like today, to be honest. Kent, I believe it's going to be clip number 10. And I think this might have been a John question, I believe. But like, tell us a little bit about your offensive philosophy.
Starting point for me would be things that our players do well. You're always going to start with that. If your system's not flexible enough to do what your players do well, then you're probably in the wrong business. But I'm a big believer in shifts and motions to distort things. We're going to do a great job of marrying our runs and our passes and make those look the same. There's a tempo element that we're excited to mix in. Allows them to play free. So when you go fast and you're playing on the ball, these guys, it's a little bit more like pickup basketball. Those would probably be the biggest things that I would say from an offensive standpoint.
That made me think. That made me think they were pushing for more. He was maybe pushing for more tempo, maybe some more no huddle. You know, at some point during last season.
I'll also say this: you got to pick and choose your spots there. There is a level of complementary football that you can do that stuff if you got a good defense. If your defense is all beat up and they're not stopping anyone, you just going out there racing, going no huddle, even if you move up and down the field, you give the ball right back to them, and it looks kind of like what Washington did to Detroit in that divisional round game. So that, I mean, it sounds good, and the players are going to love that. Don't get me wrong. But there is going to come a place in time where you got to slow it down, and you got to be able to run the ball when everybody in the building knows you're going to run the ball. So all that stuff sounds good. Don't get me wrong. But there's a lot of that same stuff Mike McCarthy said as well. And so we'll see. I mean, that's the thing. Like, it sounds good, and that's going to be what the people want to hear. I maintain that even if you brought back Mike McCarthy, something had to change on the offense. So the fact that there's going to be things changing on the offense is a start, and that's outstanding. But if you tell me what they do in free agency and you can tell me what they do in the draft, I'll be more intrigued by that than I will by just looking at this roster right now and then hearing that, because what they have right now in offense just isn't enough to me. I mean, that first round pick, I'm almost complete, just because I don't believe, even though that there were things said today that kind of cracked the window back open, that maybe there might be something done either via trade or in free agency that's a little bit more aggressive than usual. I'm not really expecting that. So for me, something big has got to come in the draft, and that's probably in the first round via wide receiver, running back, something like that. If you just think that you're just going to kind of go into this next season with kind of the same thing, we'll add another, like, I don't know, like a third round back to go with Rico Dowdle, and the offensive line is kind of what it was. Like, I don't know that the offense is taking that big of a jump, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and to build off of that, I went back and I looked at when Schottenheimer, because Schottenheimer mentioned his success in running the football, and I think I could be wrong, but the one time that his offense led the NFL in rushing was 2009 with the Jets, and Thomas Jones had nearly 1,500 yards rushing, and Sean Green had about 500. So they combined for about 2,000. Number one, that's Thomas Jones was like 31 years old, so it was right towards the end of his prime. Former Bears running back, Julius's brother, and then Sean Green was like a 24-year-old. So you need a 1-2 punch that's going to be something that's going to be different. On top of that, though, I like the sound of a running game being strong and all that stuff, but that's a very different offense in New York that with Mark Sanchez and all that was going on. You kind of have to play to your parts. You have the highest paid one of the highest paid receivers and the highest paid quarterback. And to John's point, that say what you want about Rex Ryan as a commentator or a head coach, but he's a damn good defensive mind, and those Jets defenses were really good. And so we'll see what they do on defense. Sounds like it's probably going to be Eberflus, but we'll see. And then and all that's going to play a role in how much Schottenheimer is able to execute his vision. And the biggest factor in all that is going to be what John said about, is the personnel going to be different? What are they going to do in free agency and the draft and all that?
I'm not saying these are apples to apples. The money isn't exactly there, but the Detroit Lions pay a lot of money to Jared Goff. They pay a lot of money to Penei Sewell, more than any of the offensive linemen the Dallas Cowboys have. They just gave a lot of money to Amon St. Brown. And they still have Jahmyr Gibbs, and Sam Laporta, and Jamison Williams. Like, you can go out there and add Ashton Genty, because even when the Cowboys are really good in 14 and 16, you still had Dez that was going to be he's a high money wide receiver. You had Tony Romo, and then you had Dez and Dak Prescott. Like, you still can invest. There needs to be another major player on that offense, and that's not there right now.
No doubt. And that's, we assume, coming for sure. It's funny how these teams would choose to build about that, because it's also funny when Jerry gets asked questions about, Jerry and Steven both get asked questions about, well, the Eagles are going to the Super Bowl, and with them, well, the Eagles didn't really have to go out of their way and draft a bunch of people this year. They just signed Saquon in free agency. It just doesn't feel like the Cowboys are going to get that player in free agency. It's certainly possible, but
Here's
how they
with
operate.
that. Here's my problem, because, like I always say, there's levels to this.
Sure.
And this is the part that annoys me about when we talk about Saquon Barkley or Derrick Henry with the Cowboys. Seeing how, let's even say that, and just for this hypothetical scenario, that the Eagles go on and win the Super Bowl, and Saquon Barkley is Super Bowl MVP. We'll bring up all those Saquon Henry questions at the combine. Maybe even we get different answers than we would have got last year. But once it comes down to free agency or an ability, or even at that time of year to trade, I still wouldn't even be convinced that they would make a move for a player like that, having seen. It's one thing to make that move a year ago, or when they made the Saquon Barkley move, or when Derrick Henry was signed, and you might have been frustrated then, like, why doesn't my team get involved? Now you've seen how impactful those guys are, and they've obviously seen it too, and I still don't think that they would make those moves.
Yeah. No, I agree with that too. And with the Saquon thing, it's Cowboys fans or people like Cowboys fans that should be more frustrated that their teams don't go and do that stuff. Like you see a lot about, the people clowning the Giants. And I've mentioned this before, like, I don't think the Giants made that egregious of a move by letting him go. Like, I mean, it was a 3-win team. Maybe it would have been a 5-win team. Like Saquon didn't mean to the Giants what he means to the Eagles, but he could have meant that to the Cowboys, maybe. Like, you have a better chance of Saquon changing your team if you're the Cowboys than if he had stuck around New York. The only reason the Giants are such an easy punching bag is because they're kind of a dumpster fire of an organization right now, and all of that played out in public on Hard Knocks and all that stuff. So it just looks really bad. But if you're a Cowboys fan, you should be way more pissed off that your team didn't get Saquon Barkley or Derrick Henry than if you're a Giants fan being like, yeah, Saquon wouldn't have, first of all, pushed 2,000 in New York. And even if he did, the Giants would be a 5-win team. It probably just hurt your chances of getting a better player in the 2025 draft.
How much do you think someone like Dak had in this?
Jerry said after the press conference that he'd never even talked to Dak about it. So you believe that if you want, but that's what he said.
I actually might believe that.
Yeah, because here's my thing. Like, so my whole plan going in, and when I got a chance to ask questions, it was all revolved around the fact that I wanted to write, and I am going to write for tomorrow morning. It'll be up on The Athletic, is about how this whole thing came together. And while I was hoping for a singular moment that stood out, maybe up in the Cowboys club, they said this, I said that, da-da-da-da-da, this happened. But there really wasn't that. And I think what it goes back to is that Jerry is in all those, well, not all of, but he's in a lot of the coaching meetings. So there's 3 years now that Schottenheimer's been on staff, that Jerry has gotten to observe things that Schottenheimer's said in meetings, different things that he suggested, whether they did it or not. So he already had this idea. And I feel the exact same way about Dak. You don't think that he's talked to Dak about Schottenheimer sometime in the last 3 years? He hasn't seen the way that they get along or how they carry themselves at practice and stuff like that. So I don't know that it's one of those where it's like, man, I better go check with Dak. He's going to be dealing with it. He's already seen them work together. He knows that it's either going to work or it's not to a certain level. And to that, I mean, he's got a better idea on that than he would have on Dak and Ben Johnson. Now, that's not to say you shouldn't at least interview Ben Johnson and pick his brain and see what he would do for your offense at the very least. But he does at least know, hey, I've seen Schottenheimer with Dak. I know that Dak is going to be, they're going to be good for each other.
Do you guys think deep down that Jerry and Steven know this was a bad process and this was a bad way to do things? Or do you think there's full on denial going on? Because a lot of times you can't believe what he says because it's all a dog and pony show. So do you think in his heart of hearts, he knows this did not go down the way I thought it would go down, and this is a bad process?
As always, there are levels to this. Levels of, did we mess this up on such a level that we can never do this again? Or on a level of, that could have been a little bit better. I think it's the second one. Yeah. It just like, I'll give you a good example.
Yeah.
This offseason, the way Jerry has acknowledged, probably not a great idea that we went into the season with 2 rookie starting offensive linemen. But not to the level of, we will never do that ever again. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. You need the Chaz Green 6-sack game to remind you. I'm trying not to be specific because it's weird and it's not even realistic, I guess. But the problem that I have throughout the whole thing, outside the way you did it, obviously not good. But like Schottenheimer's track record is not even one that blows your doors down and makes you go, "Oh my God, give the guy the keys." And I realize you should get a chance to be a head coach and benefit of the doubt and all that stuff or whatever. But here's some guys who have put up pretty consistent big numbers in the NFL, running offenses and calling plays. Cliff Kingsbury and Kellen Moore, who you can have and have interviewed one of them. And I know there's a lot of Cowboys fans who are not like crazy about it. And believe me, I'm not even crazy about having Kellen as head coach or Cliff as head coach. I don't think Cliff's a great fit here, but I would in a heartbeat take one of those guys over Brian Schottenheimer because I do have experience and a track record to look at. The things that they were saying about track record plus first time new head coach, I thought was just insane to me because as Stephen used the word, a lot of teams are hiring these young offensive wizards. But we think we've got, first time head coach plus all the experience combined. And I'm like, okay, are we looking at the track record of what it is? Because it's a lot of it got good in Seattle for a couple years, but it's a lot of unimpressive stuff. And I could show you the numbers and then go through all that, but I think everyone's seen them and didn't want to play that game. But it wasn't good when he was the Rams offensive coordinator. It wasn't good when he went to Georgia. If we want to talk about the college part, it wasn't good when he was with Jacksonville. It wasn't good when he was the quarterbacks coach in Indianapolis. And there's always a lot of reasons and nuance to all of these situations. But we're talking about a guy who came in here as a consultant. So,
it's KT. According to Steven, after the whole hour-long press conference was over, even if Mike came back, if Brian wasn't calling the plays, he was going to go call the plays somewhere else. So, yeah. What do you think that would have been?
Does Witten's high school need a play caller?
Wow.
That's mean.
What a jerk.
See, I'm falling into the traps of Cowboys social media.
What a jerk.
That's what I've done.
I'll be interviewing for Tampa Bay right now.
Yeah, Tampa could use that. Wow, that Liam Cohen thing was something, huh? Oh, weird deal there. Aaron Glenn's kind of skating free, too, after he basically just said, well, I mean, I would consider you guys, but you'd have to get that clown Mickey Loomis out of there, and then I might consider it. Whew, that is savage. But I want to play a clip because there's another one that jumped out at me that I thought was very interesting. That's kind of on the same token. It's number 11, Kent, and it's him talking about wanting him to call plays.
Wanted Brian to call the plays. We cherish his relationship with our players. We want him to call the plays. As my mind and our mind would drift around to alternatives, I believe he doesn't have to speak for this, but I believe if he doesn't call the plays, he probably not with the Cowboys. He doesn't have to speak to that, and he probably might not know himself, really. I'm not talking down.
I mean, it's amazing. He's like, well, hell, I guess I got to make up a place that might be interested in me. I mean, who knows? And maybe someone would have been.
Dude, that was my entire, John had his story angle going into the presser. My whole thing was going to be about the OC and who's calling plays and stuff. And because the press conference went as long as it did, I didn't have a chance to, ask a question. But shout out to Jerry. He just unprompted, nobody asked him about that or anything. Just kind of threw that out there. That was very interesting. I would have loved to get Brian's thoughts on that for sure. Just, about how did that go? Was this the complete anti-McCarthy where McCarthy came in and was like, hey, you are going to have Kellen and you are not going to call plays? And was this just, hey, you are going to be the head coach and you are going to call plays? Or was it more of, Brian wanted to and Jerry knew that and he learned from the whole McCarthy situation with Kellen and kind of went the other way? That next time we talk to Brian, that will be something I want to discuss.
After Jerry, at the end of Jerry press conferences from now on, we should just go. That's it for us. Jerry, any other questions you have for yourself?
Right. Say everything that's on your mind. Show us your hand, which they did a few times when they called it an unglamorous hire.
Well,
a lot of people may think it's an unglamorous hire, but it's not. Trust me.
If we're going to go with questions yourself, Sad, we might as well just share this because there's going to be a lot more than once a week press conferences. So this is the thing that Schottenheimer does all the time. I caught on to it pretty early on, so I will text Sad throughout press conferences with it. But he'll do this where he'll be like, so when you get the ball on first down, you like to establish the run. Why? Because if you do it, then you're just like, did somebody ask this? He does a good job of asking himself. And
it's usually with team-related stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, it's great though. I his press conferences are always good. But another thing I wanted to note off of the one today though, is that you could tell he was carrying himself more like head coach as opposed to with us. Whether you're talking about out by the tennis courts, at training camp, or even the Mondays after games and things like that. a lot more joking around, kind of having fun guy, type stuff. So I'm interested to see how that goes during the season, because that is his natural personality. His natural personality is not to be the super serious guy, but when you're a head coach, maybe you got to do more of that. So I am intrigued to see how that goes, because I think there's a lot of really good coaches that have done a good job of staying, like authentic to themselves. Like you can put Bill Belichick on 50 Manning casts, and will he lighten up a little bit? Yeah, but he's still, you can kind of tell what Bill Belichick is. I think another good example, just because Saad, we've gotten to see it also similar to Schottenheimer, is I don't see a huge difference. I'm not there every day, but from when we would talk to Dan Quinn and now him as the head coach of Washington, he does a lot of same stuff. Just watching some things over this past season that he does with their reporters and stuff seems very, obviously he kept, hey, I've done this backwards hat thing. I don't care what people are going to say, even though I'm a head coach, I'm still going to do it. I think that stuff's good. Like, don't try and change up. There's like a thing from Hard Knocks. I'm just bringing this up because he just got Kelvin Shepard. He's going to be the DC for the Lions. There's a thing when they did Hard Knocks where he thought maybe when he got on Dan Campbell's staff, he needed to cut his hair, that he shouldn't have long hair or whatever. And Dan Campbell was just like, no, you cannot cut your hair. Like that would just, you have to be authentic to who you are. So anyway, what I'm getting at is I just hope that Brian Schottenheimer stays that way and doesn't try and act like he's something different,
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt that a little bit too, but I think my thought was maybe it's just the attire, maybe the suit that brings that out of you. I am curious about just like, during the practice week, there will be two big indicators. Well, really one big indicator. Mike McCarthy usually always had like that little jacket on and, sweatpants and things like that. That was kind of his thing. With Schottenheimer, it's going to be about, is he wearing a visor or not? Because if he loses the visor, things have changed in terms of, how he's trying to approach this thing. Because very few times, I mean, I think John, you mentioned this to me when the announcement, right, where you're like, he's actually wearing a hat in that picture in the tweet they put out there. So I'll be curious to see how that is.
Yeah, there's a long sample size we got here. Just so many training camp practices. I mean, we were out in Oxnard for over a month this past year, and so yeah, he's always wearing a visor. So I would be very surprised if he doesn't continue to go with that look. Who's the last Cowboys visor coach?
Man.
Given Chan Gailey went hat. Campo, I think Campo went hatless a lot.
Parcells went hatless a lot.
Switzer went hat or no hat.
Shirtless? What?
Shirtless. Dude, I don't think there's ever been one. How much of a difference does that make to a team's success? Real question from earlier though. What if they did start out 3-8 or 3-7? Let's go 3-7.
I think he gets the full season.
3-8.
But he could be up for a dismissal at the end of the season if it goes like that.
Did you not think that it was interesting that Jerry used the word deference a few times?
No. It's a very Jerry go-to, going all the way back to the first time I really heard him beat it to death, though, is talking about the back and forth between him and Steven on the Dion contract. Mm-hmm. Jerry or Steven pushing Jerry up against the wall and Jerry being like, are you going to fight me or hit me right now? Whatever, So he's used that a bunch. So I think it just fit with this because it was Brian needing to have some deference in his previous position to Mike McCarthy because McCarthy's the head coach and things like that. But, yeah, I don't know. Jerry just gets on buzzwords and he likes to throw stuff out there.
Yeah, and Steven used that as well in the walk-off, talking about himself, saying he knows what deference is, pointing to Jerry behind him, who was holding a much bigger court with the media.
And that could be a buzzword because of the fact of that they know that everyone's saying that, man, it doesn't sound like it was a smooth coaching hire. Like, it sounds like they were arguing for power, who was going to get the final say. So that could be why they worked it in there.
Yeah.
And it's like, to me, I sit there and hear that word and I'm like, well, that's exactly what he wants. It's someone that's not going to fight me on something. And I think there's a big problem with the Cowboys organization for a long time has been comfort. I think comfort level. And Jerry used the term hanging on the rim today too. Oh, I know you guys cut that. But I think what we sometimes maybe don't talk about is like the structure that players have. The players have the structure through like during the season, a routine, and I do think it's very easy to get comfortable in that and maybe not want change. And I'm just wondering, we have your guys who are at there. I have no doubt in my mind that Schottenheimer is very well liked by some of those guys, but it's also I can see where a lot of people might be like, if you're on the team, going, well, I don't want to change. Like this is what I know. This is what we've been doing the last 4 or 5 years here in this program. And you're new guys. My 1 year in the NFL. All I know is the structure. So I want to keep the structure. I don't want a new head coach. And I feel like it came up a few times, and it's not what he meant. But I do think there is something to X's and O's being very important. And I know he didn't mean it when he said X's and O's doesn't matter. I know what he meant was he was talking about, we'll worry about that later is what he meant. He meant this is about relationships and family and all that stuff. But I don't feel great about the strategy of this. I didn't feel great about it with McCarthy either, to be honest. And that bothers me because you do see teams go hire head coach or play caller, just to be totally fair, who they're hired in mind because they give them an advantage schematically. And I don't know, but it just doesn't feel like you're getting that here. And that is very annoying to me. Although he could surprise us.
Yeah, that's a great point, KT. And to be honest, it brings 3 people to my mind: Jimmy Johnson, Bill Belichick, and Michael Irvin. And I'll explain why. Because for me, like it takes me back to that Troy Aikman clip where he's just tearing into Barry Switzer, like, why don't we have a head coach that can do something about this or things like that. When he's talking about Barry Switzer, and then also Bill Belichick kind of being a little bit of a hard ass, and then Michael Irvin talking in this past weekend when he went on his rant. He was kind of talking about how players need to stop taking and get or earn their thing and not just take the glory from the glory days and all that stuff. And that is an interesting point by you. I think the X's and O's, obviously he knows that's important and there will be a time to implement all that. Schottenheimer, for as much of a personable person he is and players love him and stuff, I do wonder how he's going to be able to convey that, disciplinarian hard ass thing that, Jimmy obviously did. And then there was a big drop off from Jimmy to Barry. We've seen Belichick do it. The problem is that stuff works well when you're getting results. And if you don't get results, that is a very short stick.
KT, I just have to ask you this. Let's not go too far down this rabbit hole, but I need you to at least get your thoughts on this. When you talk about not having a schematic advantage, I know you're talking about the offense, but how are you feeling about the defense if Matt Eberflus is the defensive coordinator?
I actually love it.
I did not expect you to say that.
Yeah, no, I love it. I think Matt had obviously too much on his plate there in Chicago. So, you only know until you know, I guess, in those situations, if you're getting the right guy for something like that. Like, for instance, if Zach Taylor or I'll use Matt LaFleur, because those guys weren't good at clock management, like we would know about it real quick because they have good teams and a lot of playoff wins. Man, Eberflus could have those mess ups. It didn't matter. That team wasn't competing for a playoff spot at any point. And I guess we'll learn that quickly with Brian too here. But I love the idea of Eberflus if that is going to happen. He actually had good, it felt like solid competitive defenses in Chicago with a lackluster roster. And I always thought he was a really good coach here. So I'm a fan. Do you guys agree?
I'm fine with it. It's going to be interesting to see how it works out because it's one thing when you're come off being a really good DC with the Colts, but things went so bad, especially in this last year in Chicago, where you're just kind of like, all right, I wonder how he rebounds from this because his stock was pretty high for a while there, but that was a real bad look with how things fell apart in Chicago. To be the only head coach in the history of that franchise to be fired during a season is pretty wild. But then also just the thing I keep going back to is this is third different defensive coordinator in as many years. I mean, that's a lot for old Micah Parsons there. So
yeah,
I think it's going to be Eberflus. They still are going through the interview process, but it really needs to be somebody that they think is going to be there for at least a couple of years. You do not want to be going 4 years with 4 different DCs and Micah Parsons' first 5 years in the NFL.
Yeah, and also I think the thing with Eberflus that intrigues me the most is kind of, what we learned about Zimmer as soon as he got hired, where he was like, like, wait till you see all these different ways Micah is going to be this chess piece and all that stuff. And as John said earlier, I believe Micah Parsons is the best football player on this team. And I want to like that was the intriguing part. That was the whole storyline in training camp, was all these different ways that Zimmer's going to use Micah. Now it all got thrown out the window because the team went down and Micah went down and all this stuff. But that Eberflus, he hasn't had, Micah Parsons said about Zimmer, like Zimmer's never had a Micah Parsons. Well, Eberflus has never had a Micah Parsons. So I'm really intrigued to see how he would use somebody like that in his prime and do that.
As a DC, he hasn't, but when he first came to the Cowboys, when Rob Ryan was calling the defense, he was linebackers coach then. So that was DeMarcus Ware. So he has had some time around him. So that would be the only other person I would compare it to. But thinking of Micah, for some reason, when you said it, though, Sada made me think of this. One thing Micah might like, though, is that if there's ever a coach that might allow him to take a snap on offense, it might be Schottenheimer.
Okay. Now we're having fun.
All right. Guys, coaches meeting. Micah doesn't like the defense. Should I just give him a couple handoffs? Yeah, that'll do it. All right. Anybody else? All right, let's go get a snack.
Let's go get a GD snack. No, I
give him 2 handoffs, throw it to him once in the flat. He'll be fine.
Yeah. I agree. This is what we're looking for, right?
With Eberflus, I will say I went back and thought about his last year, and I was like, yeah, most of the stuff that really stood out to me in such a negative way were all head coaching things.
Yeah.
They weren't really defensive court. Like Thanksgiving was just the worst. I mean, that was one of the worst coaching jobs, of the season in terms of what happened in clock management down the stretch and all that stuff.
Hail Mary too.
Yeah. So
that was a guy. Yeah.
So it was a lot of head coaching things that I don't think that'll be an issue in Dallas.
So real quick on him too, let me just include this in here. Sad, do you remember how you say that guy's first name? He's with the Lions. The Muhammad, is it El Quadin?
Al Quadin, yeah.
Al Quadin. So yeah, he started out on the Cowboys back in August, and then got claimed by the Lions, and with all their injuries, he ended up playing quite a bit for them. But anyway, so I was looking for some stuff on Eberflus the other day, and I found this article from 2022 USA Today. Muhammad had been with Eberflus in Indianapolis. So when Muhammad ended up going to Chicago with Eberflus, he was asked about, well, what to expect or whatever like that. And Muhammad said, he's the same guy every day. He's high energy, brings the juice. It wasn't hard to buy into because the way the scheme is set up, if you're not playing at a fast pace, you're not running to the ball, punching at the ball, stripping at the ball, just 11 guys going to the ball, you're not going to play. So I guess that, I don't know, kind of reminds me a little bit of how the Cowboys defense has been, especially under Dan Quinn, the emphasis on the takeaways and things like that. So we'll see if that carries over, but sorry, go on.
Oh, like you said there, but I think that reminds me more of Marinelli than it does Dan Quinn.
For sure. And obviously he came from Marinelli's side. He worked with, so that's the thing about Eberflus is that he came over to be linebackers coach in the 3-4 Rob Ryan, but they liked him so much that when Jason was like, well, we're going to go to Rod Marinelli. Well, no, actually, sorry, Monty Kiffin. Remember, that was the original one for a year there to switch over to the 4-3. And then Rod took over. They kept Eberflus the linebackers coach. So he went from coaching linebackers like edge rushing linebackers in a 3-4 like Ware or Anthony Spencer to then being like Sean Lee's coach and Rolando McClain. So, I mean, he has coached all over the place. But yeah, you're right. That is a good point. It does sound a little bit like Robert Marinelli for sure.
Yeah, obviously there's too. It's I don't know if it's fully official, but it's been reported Al Harris leaving.
Yeah.
Which is
I heard some rumblings that he wasn't coming back regardless.
Yeah.
Of like whoever that the DC was going to be. I just think that whole defensive side was going to go in another direction.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I mean, it makes sense they would go in another direction. I don't know that specifically Al Harris. As well as like assistant coaches, every once in a while, assistant coach, the fan base will just get wrapped up in and fall in love with. And part of it's probably because
yeah.
Oh my God, it's partly because it's like just a former player that you kind of remember, and then you just you get tired of it. And I just tell you guys, if Banjo is your special teams coach, there's your former player that you don't remember, but you act like you did remember. Old Banjo. But who knows if he'll get hired officially as special teams coach. I'll have to figure out on that end. Uh, I think we've done a lot here, but I think we will need to get to a legit. Let's really look at the roster and things like that soon. So maybe we'll do a little free agency. Should they stay or should they go? Type thing, because Cowboys do have some guys who are obviously going to walk. It's wild seeing Biotish and Dorrance Armstrong and players like that performing in the championship game, the NFC championship game, of course, which didn't go well for Washington. Quick thoughts on your Super Bowl rematch, Eagles Chiefs. You guys surprised? Any thoughts on yesterday's games or anything? Well,
I think this is Peyton Hendershot's time to shine. So
hell yes,
this is where he goes and does his thing. I saw Hendershot yesterday just pop up on my screen. I was like, oh my God, that's a blast from the past. Totally forgot about that.
Forgetful. If you're going hot takes, I don't think this is a hot take, but it's just the way I feel. I don't think that you just kind of beat the champ. If you're going to take out the champ, you take out the champ. And the Buffalo Bills did nothing to take out the champ. So I don't want to hear about refs and these close calls or whatever. There was nothing that the Bills did in that game that made you think that they deserved to win that game. The plays were there to be made for them. If you want to twist rules around and not even twist rules, you just don't know rules, then that's fine. Make your conspiracy theories, and that's cute. But at the end of the day, that's a scary trio that they got over in Kansas City. And when I say trio, as great as Kelsey is, as great as Chris Jones is, the scary trio is Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and Steve Spagnuolo. And you do not want to go against those guys on 2 weeks for them to prepare for you. They are going to come up with a master class. And if you are a knowledgeable, honest-speaking Eagles fan, you were rooting your ass off for the Bills to win that game.
Yeah, and on that point, I was rooting for the Bills, and during
that's because you're an Eagles fan. No, I'm just
hey, don't do that to him. These Eagles fans are crazy.
While you're watching the game, you do, even though I'm not like a Bills fan, but I was just rooting for them for one game, you kind of get wrapped up into it sometimes. And so, but then when you look at it like zoomed out, you're absolutely right, because like they fumbled like 3 times and fell on top of it each time. Josh Allen threw too many interceptable balls. Then at the beginning, he threw like a few, and then the drop by the tight end on 4th down. I mean, there's too many mistakes that the Bills made that you can't make those mistakes, and you're not just how a ref spotted a really tough 4th down call away from beating them. Like that doesn't help. Don't get me wrong, but at the same time, there's other things that you can do. And once I kind of sat on the game after it ended, I was like, yeah, like they did not deserve to win that game. You can't do that against the Chiefs, and you damn sure can't do that against them at Arrowhead.
I agree. But I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. But I did throw out something on Twitter that I dealt with.
You've been throwing a lot of stuff out on Twitter.
I've been
taking shots at poor Mike McCarthy.
Engagement farming. So shots at McCarthy. I've been taking shots at McCarthy for 5 years.
I know, man, but
baseless. Just baseless stuff.
Can you let it breathe for a little bit? You and Bobby Belt, man, chill out.
Okay, Bobby's way worse than I am, and everyone knows it. And no one listens to my Cowboys opinions except here. The Eagle, they're tuning in for The Rock and my jokes. So
Fair.
What I will say is the rule that I guess I didn't know existed, the palpably intentional, palpable heartbeat. No, the tush push, Luvu twice tries to jump over the pile and time the snap. And then a defensive lineman jumps off sides too. And then they get the big warning that they're going to automatically award Philadelphia a touchdown if they do it again. I got to say, I think that is a shitty rule. And I understand that we can't just have guys jumping off sides the whole game. But, dude, Frankie Louvu was not jumping off sides on purpose. He was trying to stop the play. The defensive line.
You're trying to injure some? Oh, stop play. I got you. Yeah.
He was trying to stop the play. Yeah.
Yeah, he wouldn't try to injure anybody. He's not that type of player.
Well,
what did you say? Sorry about
that too much. Just think about what he was actually doing.
Yeah, no, there's no way that would have. Yeah, nobody got injured doing that. No.
Well, it's football, so you sign up and maybe you get hurt. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe don't sign up. No. My point is very clear, though. I want to get this right. The defensive lineman also was not jumping off sides on purpose. They weren't all of a sudden just going. Now, they might have been going, yeah, we have nothing to lose. Let's jump off. But then the rule, the way it's stated, frustrates me because the idea that a defense can't come up with a strategy to stop an offensive play or the offensive team will be awarded a touchdown, that's asinine. So if the offense has 3 false starts in a row, we have to start giving stuff to the defense. Like, it doesn't work both ways. So I have a problem with that. And I do support what Washington did. Back against the wall, yeah, if they're going to snap the ball and they're not going to run an actual play, they're going to do the rugby play. You know what? I am going to jump over the center and try to stop it. And ultimately, it kind of hurts them because clock kept running too in between those penalties. But I just think the NFL could get in a pickle here because the way it's worded in the rule book, it's like makes it look like you're intentionally doing it. They weren't intentionally jumping off sides. They were taking a risk to try. Yeah, in the end, they're committing a penalty, but they were taking a risk to try to stop the play. And that's way different than jumping off sides on purpose.
Yeah, and I get that, but my big thing on all of that stuff is I'm just not going to waste my time getting worked up about it until it's actually called, and then I'll do that. Because here's the thing.
Wait till Eagles fans get in your timeline, then you'll get worked up pretty quick.
If people knew how many people I had muted out there, you would just stop following me because I'm not seeing anything anybody's tweeting at me. But anyway, no, I've muted so many people. I might have the record. But anyway, I don't really care about the wording of it. I care about how it's enforced on the field. So I was at a Lions game in '97 where it's the game where Barry Sanders went over 2,000 yards. They were playing the Jets. Jets were coached by Parcells, and the DC was Bill Belichick. Both teams, whoever won the game was going to make it to the playoffs. Obviously, the Jets in the AFC, Lions in the NFC. And it was at the Pontiac Silverdome, and the place was just crazy loud. And so there was a time in the fourth quarter where Neil O'Donnell, the Jets quarterback, could not hear because we were being so loud. And so the ref stopped the play and said that if we did not quiet down, the Lions would get it was like a 15-yard penalty or whatever like that. All that did was get everybody to get louder. Neil O'Donnell again tried to pull out from under the center and look over at the ref, and the ref's just like, we got to go. Like, I'm not really going to, we're not really calling this right now. We're just saying it because we're trying to help, but nothing's really going to come of this. And that's the way I felt about them saying that right there. They weren't really going to call anything, that they're just saying that. And if you don't believe anything that I'm saying here, that's fine. But I'll just bring up something that I brought up back in the tents during training camp with another member of the media who I'm not going to mention their name, but they are very good with rules and might have played in the NFL at one point. And when we had that big, long talk in there, I believe you were there, Saad, with the officials about the hip trap tackle, I walked to that individual after it was over and I said, yeah, this sounds all good. They're saying that. It's going to be an emphasis, but watch how little it's called. I feel very confident with what I said that day. Did you see all the hip drop? Remember how much we talked about how that was just going to change the game? You see how many of those were called this year? How many hip drop tackles were called this year that just changed the game?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. But KT, I see your point, and I think the pickle that you're talking about the NFL finds itself in is because there's so many people out in the court of public opinion calling for the tush push to be banned that it's kind of like, well, are you going to ban that and then as a reaction, or how? Because I personally have not been somebody that has really been like, leading the parade about the tush push needs to be banned. I mean, look, we saw Josh Allen. Josh Allen can't convert a quarterback sneak to save his life. Now he's not doing the tush push, but still, regardless, like that sort of thing. But yeah, that's a tough situation because that's not like a defensive. That's not a defense jumping off sides trying to block a field goal where you're like, dude, like what are you doing? Like, what are we doing here? Troy Polamalu did that. I mean, there's a lot of players that have done what Frankie Louvu was trying to do. So yeah, that's a tough situation. Actually, Frankie did that kind of earlier where he timed the blitz and hit. No, was that?
Yeah. it was on a run play, incredible play.
Yeah.
One of the best plays
So-
I've ever seen. Amazing.
Yeah, so like he did that kind of earlier. Now he didn't jump on top, but he was basically timing the snap and making the. So yeah, I mean, I see your point. It is a weird situation.
The other thing is that we're forgetting that we're not talking about in the whole, if you want to get into the tush push thing, is that it's also kind of amazing that your quarterback hasn't gotten injured for how often you do it. They even brought it up a little bit in the Chiefs game, the Chiefs-Bills AFC Championship game, where they said that Mahomes had been doing some sneak stuff like that a few years back, and he got hurt doing it, and that's why he doesn't do it anymore like that. So there is a little bit of that play, too, where you are putting yourself at risk, too, and that just hasn't come back to bite the Eagles. But it's not their fault that they found a way to execute something that is a legal play.
Dude, absolutely. This is where it got annoying for me still with Eagles fans because I think this is going to get everyone off sides, but it did. Because all my tweet said was just basically the point of my tweet, and I want to get it right just so I'm giving full context to everyone. Sorry, guys, I'm playing the game of look what I tweeted. I know it's annoying when people do that.
Yeah,
but
cool, Jerry.
If you're not going to allow the defense to try to time the snap, then the tush push shouldn't be allowed anymore. And I'm not some guy who thinks it needs to be banned either. I don't believe that. But I do think after two Luvu jumps, and then a defensive lineman just jumping off sides, all in the 1 yard line, so half the distance to the goal, get a little bit closer. After 3, the ref's like, we're going to automatically award them a score if they do it again. I'm like, okay, you would not do that if it were the other way around. If the offense had 3 straight false starts, the defense wouldn't just get points. I think that's insane that that's a rule. And when you read the rule, it's crazy. It's crazy that this exists.
Well, it's not for that from what I've heard. I heard it's for the whole, like, in case somebody's running in for a touchdown and a fan runs out on the field and tackles that player, they can still award that player with a touchdown like that. So, I mean, it's very like...
Remember the old Joe Flacco 49ers Ravens Super Bowl? Or he's mic'd up and he's like, hey, if they run this kickback, just step out on the field.
Yeah, that's what that rule is there for. They can give you the touchdown.
But for a palpably unfair act, offender may be disqualified. The referee, after consulting the crew, enforces any such distance as they consider equitable, whatever, blah, blah, blah. The referee may award a score. And that's where it got real quickly up on watching on TV. Pereira was like, yeah, they can reward them a score here if they do it again. And it's like, and then Sean Hockey says it. And I'm like, we're just going to give points. Like what Washington did, the intent was not to cheat. The intent was to stop the play. And if you're going to start giving away points to teams for a team trying to stop the play, then maybe we need to go ahead and send the whole league up to the moon for a little bit.
Yeah. I guess that would have
crazy.
That would have bothered me a lot more if it was in the other game. I'm just actually kind of amazed that you didn't care that much in that particular game because I was like, to give them the score. You know what? Give Washington an extra score. They're not winning this game. I don't know how long you want to play this thing for. Let Luvu jump over 25 more times. They're not winning this game. In no world is Washington winning this game, but we can keep playing. Also, for them to have that rule out there right there, someone tipped someone off and was like, hey, they're going to do this. When they do this, then you got to do this play right here.
Yeah.
You got to call this out. This is actually in the rule book or something, you know, for them to have that immediately like that, for us never to have seen that before, for how long they've been doing this tush push.
Sure.
Pretty wild.
I'm saying I've been called a lot of things in my life, but never at the volume of the last 24 hours. Like it's the most I've been called a bad thing. And it's just, they all think I'm a Commanders fan or something. Dude, because it gets spread on Eagles Twitter. And I'm just like, oh my God, you people really are what the Always Sunny people make you out to be.
Well, they
John,
are.
John, do you remember that story I wrote? Do you remember that story I wrote in like 2019 or 2020 when I like went out to Philadelphia and I told you like I was just gonna write what it's like for a Cowboys fan to
yeah.
Do you the comments on that? Back then we had this thing at the Athletic called the NPS score.
Yeah.
So it was like how, like, you know, when you click the little how great it was. My NPS score for that story was like a negative 500 or something like that. Yeah. It was crazy. Yeah, and you just read the comment.
I'll tell you this. When we were in Philly this year, a reporter that covers the Eagles, you know, we're sitting there having some pregame lunch, and I mentioned to this individual that, yeah, you know, if Detroit is in the NFC Championship game, I'd probably go back to Detroit and go to the game with some family. But I don't think I would bring them here if it was the Lions, because at this time, I don't think that it looked like the Lions were going to get the 1 seed, but obviously you didn't know for sure. And at the very beginning of me saying this individual starts like defending Philly and saying, no, it would be fine, whatever. And I'm just looking at him like, I've known you for how long? You don't see that I come here and cover these games? Like, what are we? And I didn't even get like maybe more than 30 seconds more than what I just said right there. And it was like, oh yeah, no, you're right. I wouldn't probably do that. You think I'm going to bring my brother and his wife here to deal with this? Like, what world, who are you lying to? Like, you're going to act like this isn't a thing? Like, were they very upset when everything went down? Like, it makes me wonder, were they upset that video got out of that guy yelling at that Packers fan? Like, this isn't us. It's not? In what world? Like, you think this is just a made up stereotype?
Man, I used to be on the field down on the sideline during, Cowboys-Eagles games on the Cowboys side, obviously. And the things that they would yell at me, a photographer on the sideline, would make your head spin. And that's not even a player or another fan in the stands. They're just maybe the association is just, we would go to Starbucks next to the hotel and maybe have a Cowboys hat on, and people in the street just dog cussing you for the association is amazing. I've experienced it firsthand, so I don't know about you, John, or y'all don't wear Cowboys gear, so you probably don't get it.
No, but it's not about getting it. Like, as in someone's saying it to you, you can just observe the way that people are acting amongst themselves, to where you're just like, what are we doing here? Like, the being aggressive and physical with people just because they're wearing like a different color shirt and they're not even saying anything. Like, it's wild to see it. And I get it. If you've never been there and you've never been around it, I get that you might not think it's whatever, but I'm just telling you, like, people that cover the NFL, people that go to games and all the stadiums, that this isn't just some like made up thing where they're just like, hey, who should we sit there and say is the most like unruly fan base? Oh, I don't know. Let's make sure we get to a consensus on this. No, it's you don't even go into like, I've never been a Cowboys fan. I don't care if the Cowboys win. I'm saying when I go to these games, just the things I observe, I'm just like, there's no chance I would bring family members into this in an NFC Championship game. What are you smoking? There's no chance that this would happen.
Yeah, my craziest experience with that was before I was at the Athletic and when I was at ESPN Dallas Radio, and I would fly on the Cowboys charter to a road game or two every season. So my first one ever was to Philadelphia. This has to be like 2017 or 16 or something. So I rode on the team bus to the stadium, and as soon as we entered,
eggs. Yeah.
We got pelted by eggs. And
as a tradition.
I was like,
I don't even mention that anymore because I just thought everybody knew.
They've cut down on it a lot. The last 5 or 6 times I've been there, they haven't.
Well, it's because eggs are so expensive right now.
A lot of middle fingers.
All I'll say is this: is that to end my thought on this, it's the only visiting stadium that we go to that the local news say that they don't wear any of their local TV stations gear or use the mic flags because of when you're down on the sideline, even after a game, stuff that could potentially be thrown at you or said to you. So I don't know of that anywhere else. The only place else that even got in that level is there was a while there certainly where people felt that way about some of the Raiders games in Oakland.
I experienced some stuff in New York too. Giants fans were really unruly one game. I can't remember which game it was, but yeah.
So they must have been good at the time.
Yeah, it's pretty good rival there in the early 2010s.
It was the game that not Joseph Randall, Rod Smith had that super long touchdown. Rob, remember that game? That was that game.
I forgot about Rod Smith.
They were getting owned by Rod Smith, so they had a reason to be upset. Yeah.
Not the old Steelers great, of course. Okay. Well, that'll do it for Schottenheimer press conference day. Thank you all for joining us. Thanks for listening over the weekend when we dropped one too. Really appreciate it. And thank you guys for covering for me while I went to Vegas. Had a good time. Didn't
Won a
get
lot
my
of
bet
money?
in on Schottenheimer though. Didn't get my bet in.
Did you come out
Went-
on top?
No,
Damn.
no. Well, I think seeing the Killers show was good enough. John saw that same show.
It's pretty good.
Wasn't that pretty good? Isn't that the
Pretty
most
good.
aggressive start to a concert?
Pretty
That is
good.
like 30 minutes of like catch your breath.
Front man has a lot of energy.
That front man doesn't stop. Man. Oh, B-Flow.
For
You hadn't
being
seen
a
the
non,
Killers.
I believe he's non-drinker, non-drug, no drugs. I don't
Very
believe-
light drinking, I would say. No
You
drugs.
sure about that?
Well, back in the day, he used to.
I'm talking about now.
Now, probably not. I mean, he's
don't
full.
think
I mean, he's
so.
always been a Mormon, though. You know.
brings a
He's
lot of-
very religious.
Yeah, he brings a lot of energy.
Yeah. Well, maybe Adderall.
Red Bulls.
Red Bulls are huge in rock and roll, green rooms. Get that energy up. We'll be back. Get the energy up like the end of this podcast, Kevin. For Kent. All right, for Kent. Give it for Kent, everybody.
Thank you.
For Saad. For John. Go read their stuff. All right, they're writing. They're writing right now. They're writing as we speak. Go read their stuff tomorrow morning. We're recording this on Monday night. So read their stuff on The Athletic, on their takeaways from the press conference, and who knows what's to come. We'll see you next time on the One Star Cowboys podcast. Love you guys. Bye.
The town's on edge, but the night's still young. Dreams ain't fallen, the anthem's still sung. Cherry and a rookie in this rodeo show, holding on tight, never letting go. Holding on tight, never letting go. Holy, holy, hoes.
There's a very low percentage of this that is smiles and glory holes.
Hey, it's Austin James. Yes, I'm living with diabetes, but it doesn't have to define me. Thanks to the Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor, I get real-time glucose readings throughout the day. The Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor is small and easy to wear, giving me the freedom to focus on my life as a parent and a musician. Now this is progress. You can get a free sensor at freestylelibre.us.
Offer available for people who qualify. Visit myfreestyle.us to see all terms and conditions. Certain exclusions apply. Data on file, Abbott Diabetes Care. For prescription only. Safety info found at freestylelibre.us.